Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
Hey there, and welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast. Now, this is a really quick podcast. It's all about stupidity. So, and over the last week or so, I've heard many people say to me, Tony, you can't legislate against stupidity. And I agree. One example, recently we had here in Australia a fine increase for using a mobile phone while you're driving. Now, the fine was increased to $1,000 with a loss of 4 demerit points. Now, whether you think the increase is valid or justified or it's a revenue raiser, the reality is the law's here, right? If you get caught using a mobile phone while you are driving, you will lose 4 demerit points and worse, get fined $1,000. And whether you agree with it or not, I understand the reason why. The stats seem to indicate that distraction on the roads is a killer, and the reality is that mobile phones are a distraction. How much of a distraction is probably the point for discussion. However, this isn't the place all the time. I'm going to share the link to these stats that I'm going to talk through in the description. So if you want to check it out, please do. So in Australia, distraction has been identified as a contributing factor in 22% of all car accidents and a staggering 71% of truck accidents. It's also been identified as a contributing factor in 46% of near crashes. Now, experts believe that using a mobile phone while driving greatly impacts your ability to concentrate on driving. However, despite this, a Queensland study recently done showed that 25% of drivers still used their handheld mobile phone while driving on a regular basis. A further 14% reported using their phones to text while driving. And another study by the Australian government in 2011 found that 59% of mobile phone users in Australia use their phones while driving. And at the time, 93% of Australian drivers reported owning a phone. So, admittedly, 2011, that's a little bit dated. However, that's the stats that they provided. Of these, only 28% reported using a hands-free car kit. Perhaps predictably, the highest level of mobile use while driving came from the youngest drivers, aged 18 to 24. Now, the reality is, 4 days into the new fine period, which started February 1, there was 195 people booked using a mobile phone. 195. So you work that out. That's $195,000 generated in revenue by stupidity. You know, there's no other way. There's just no other way that I can put that. By stupidity. Sheer stupidity. And this is the reality. You cannot legislate against stupidity. When the fines came in, right, my answer to that was really simple. Leave the phone in the pocket. I can't touch it if it's in my pocket. And if I don't have pockets, it goes into the center console. That's the reality. Whether I agree with the fine or the loss of demerit points, that's immaterial. The reality is it's law, and if I get caught touching it, it's $1,000 or I lose 4 points. But as we know, you can't legislate against stupidity. Now, as another example, every day when Sharon and I are doing our training runs for the Tokyo Marathon, there's a group, and we run down For those that know Queensland, we run down near the water at Cleveland here on the Redlands coast. There's a group of P-platers that come through every afternoon doing squeals around the roundabout, it's almost like they're deliberately trying to lose control of their car and generally playing with fire. Now, no regards to the consequences of the law, right? Just a belief that nothing bad will happen to them until something does. And then they'll all say, oh, it was just an accident, we didn't see it coming. No, they're stupid. And they're ignorant of the fact that there are laws in place, but the laws in place doesn't stop them. That's the reality. You cannot legislate against stupidity. Like everything, it is always the 3% that don't give a shit that forces changes in legislation, forcing new requirements onto the 97% who generally do the right thing. And, you know, there's so many people talking about governments becoming nanny states because we try and legislate against stupidity. That's the reality. We want to try and keep everyone safe and everyone alive. But since the dawn of time, there's been stupidity. There's been stupid people. You know, we had the Darwin Awards, for example, that continually come out where people have left the gene pool because of something ridiculous that they've done. That's the sheer fact that we look at. Within our human gene pool, there are people that have been overcompensated with the stupid gene. And we keep seeing it. No amount of legislation, regulations will ever change that. Now, there's still a lot that we can do in relation to the mobile phone legislation. So, for example, if you use the phone to pay for takeaway while you're in the drive-through of that takeaway, you could cop a fine of $1,000 and the loss of 4 demerit points. Your car is stationary. You're leaning out the window to tap and go using your phone, and you could cop a $1,000 fine. Now, the police say, turn your engine off, put her in park, and you'll be right. The reality is you've stopped. Most people have their handbrakes on when they're in the or in park when they're in the drive-through and they're paying. You know, that's the ridiculous side of this. You must stop, place the handbrake on, put the car in park, and then turn the engine off and pay. Otherwise, you'll be fined. Ridiculous. Now, the reality also is if you've got like a GPS that's mounted in your car, right, you can touch that to change directions. But you can't touch the same GPS if it happens to be on your phone. Because if you touch your phone, you're in trouble. So now if you want to change GPS on your phone, you've actually got to pull over to the side of the road, stop the car, put it in park, and adjust the GPS. Otherwise, it's $1,000, Smiley. So it's ridiculous. You can change channels on your radio. You can put your volume up on your music. You can adjust your GPS if it's fitted into the dash, but you can't touch your phone. You know, there's a couple of ridiculous things here. Now, I would love personally to see stats as mobile phone use increased. I have no doubt that as it became accepted that it was wrong to use the phone while driving, the people that still use the phone were then using it and trying not to get caught and hiding it. And I reckon that would have had to have had a massive increase in accidents, etc., etc. People trying to hide the fact that they're using the phone. Now, I'm not saying we should be using the phone, not at all. And once again, this is about legislating against stupidity. So I've got no doubt that accidents and distractions increased as people attempted to hide the use of the mobile phone from others. Now, I agree with the legislation, so don't get me wrong. The less distractions for drivers, the better. Yet, every street you drive down now, almost, it feels like every street, main streets especially, you've got flashing neon signs, you've got these advertising screens. Is that not distracting? So at what stage do we say common sense needs to be applied to some of this? I don't know. Common sense we know isn't common practice. Yes, I know. But the reality is, the law says if you touch your mobile phone, that's $1,000 Smiley, and if you're a P-plater, you lose your license. 4 points gone. So that's the risk you take, and stupid people will continue to take that risk no matter what the legislation says. You cannot legislate against stupidity, and I will see you all next week.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.